I want to bring in a senator who may know more about this bill than anybody else right now. It's John Barrasso of Wyoming. He's a member of the Republican leadership. He's one of the 13 lawmakers involved in drafting the legislation. He's also had a career in medicine for many years, so it wouldn't surprise if he was the guy in leadership shepherding this bill. Senator Barrasso, welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me, Chuck. Great to be with you.
Well, let's talk about some specifics here. There's been a lot reported about what's in it, what's not in it. So help me out. Let's start with what can you tell us that's in it as far as it's been reported. This supposedly is going to repeal the individual mandate and the employer mandate. But one thing we don't really know is the issue of Medicaid expansion. One report indicates the entire thing will be phased out by 2023. Another report indicates that it may go longer to 2026. What can you tell us about Medicaid expansion? Is it totally going away? Is it a phase out? What can you say?
Well, what I can say is we have to act urgently. You may have seen today the Anthem Insurance Company has pulled out completely today from Wisconsin and from Indiana on the exchanges. So there's an urgency that we do something. And yes, the hated individual mandate where the government steps in and says you have to buy a government-approved product, that's going away. With regard to Medicaid, I'm a doctor, practiced medicine for 25 years in Wyoming, and was in the Wyoming State Senate, where we dealt a lot with Medicaid. And I always felt if the states could have more authority and yet we could use the money much better than one size fits all from Washington. With regard to the expansion, what is planned is a more gradual landing for the states that expanded. They can still stay expanded, but they're just not going to get all of this additional Medicaid bonus money that President Obama included in the Medicaid in the Obamacare law, which encouraged many of them to expand. When it expanded, they got 100% on the dollar, but Medicaid was set up as a match between states and the federal government, and we're just returning to that. But we're not. So
you're getting rid of that funding. You're getting rid of the incentive to expand. I want to go back to the Anthem. I want to go back to that. Yes. You say there's an urgency. Part of the reason, Anthem themselves put out a press release, and they said one of the reasons, and the bigger reason why they dropped out of Wisconsin, was due to a shrinking and deteriorating individual market, as well as continual changes and uncertainty in federal operations, rules and guidance, including cost-sharing reduction subsidies and the restoration of taxes on fully insured coverage. Bottom line, they got out because HHS, under the Trump administration, will not guarantee basically those extra risk dollars that the Obama administration was guaranteeing insurance companies. And it
courts
is that
ruled were illegal. And courts ruled were illegal.
So you don't want to, well, that's, first of all, that hasn't made it all the way. There have been courts, but it's not yet illegal. We don't know the answer to that question. It hasn't made its way to the Supreme Court. But let me ask you that specific question. Why not allow that so that you don't have this panic moment? It gives you more time to pass this bill properly, maybe with committee hearings and markups and things like that.
Well, as you know, President Trump has continued making those payments every month. But the insurance, like Anthem, before the election, before we knew who was going to be elected president, said they were thinking of pulling out by 2018. They saw a death spiral happening. And across the country, companies have been pulling out to the point that we have over half of the counties in the country where people have maybe one or two choices. We have 40 counties where there are no choices. So even if you have Obamacare and subsidies, nobody is selling insurance on the individual market. Those people are being left.
But do you acknowledge that
there is an urgency
one of the
to do something?
Right. Do you acknowledge that one of the reasons, though, is that HHS is accelerating this process?
In Maryland, the state of Maryland, they said that rates were going to go up over 50%, and they said maybe half of that was rated to the uncertainty. Well, they said of the 50% requested increase, up to half of that, they said, was related to uncertainty. Well, the other half of it, over 25% of the increase, an increase of 25% is due to the death spiral of the Obamacare market as more and more people, especially you get rid of the individual mandate, people act as free citizens and decide they're not going to buy a government-mandated product.
All right, so 50%, though, you acknowledge has to do with that created uncertainty. Let me ask you this. Senator Orrin Hatch, who is the Senate President pro tem, so he's the most senior Republican, he's making a case today on the Senate floor that you don't need hearings because you've held Obamacare hearings in the past. Is that really the defense of no hearings and no markups on this bill, that because you had hearings on another piece of legislation passed by another Congress, that applies to this bill? I'm confused.
There's going to be there's going to be a big markup on this. It's the whole process of the vote-a-rama.
After the bill passed?
Be 50 or on the floor of the Senate. There may be 50 to 100 amendments offered. This is a wide-open amendment process before we vote yes or no on the entire bill. But let's face it, the Democrats have said from the beginning they weren't interested in working with us on the changes. I heard Senator McCaskill, who I respect, but President Obama said to the Democrats all the way through, forcefully defend and be proud of Obamacare. They were wearing blinders. They were offering blank checks. The American people deserve better. I hear about it every weekend at home in Wyoming.
But are you really comfortable defending this process? Are you really comfortable defending this process, Senator? It's been, I mean, on the vote-a-rama you're talking about, it's possible all those amendments all get replaced when you just vote on the last bill at the end.
Well, there's going to be votes. People are going to be able to watch it on C-SPAN. Every member is going to be allowed to offer amendments. Prices have doubled in the individual market in the last 4 years. The choices have gone down. People are very concerned all across the country that they've lost insurance that they had. They lost the doctor that they liked. All of the promises, so many of them under the Obamacare plan have failed. And the Democrats' plan is single-payer health care that they've just passed, the California State Senate has, and the fiscal note, $400 billion, is more than twice the cost of the entire general fund for the state of California.
Wow, I didn't know. That's the Democratic Party's plan?
That's the Democratic Senate in the state of California.
Oh, okay.
And now we have a majority of Democrats in the House of Representatives who have co-sponsored similar legislation in the U.S. Congress. That's what the Democrats are offering.
Okay. The last I checked, I thought it was Obamacare.
Well, you said, look, working on both sides of the aisle, which is what Senator McCaskill just talked about.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do that. Their approach is a single-payer health care plan as we work to try to repeal and replace Obamacare.
All right, Senator Barrasso, I'm going to leave it there. We'll be watching next week, and we'll research to see if these other bills exist on that front. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.